And the guy said, well, the best wine is the wine you like. And turned out that guy owns the winery. Anyway, I thought that story applies to barbecue too. So I tell people the best barbecue is the barbecue you like.
Exactly.
You can start a real argument in Memphis or in Kansas City who does the best barbecue. So we were pretty arrogant to say America's best, but it's a catchy title. So I will tell people best barbecue is the barbecue you like.
Exactly. That's definitely true. Because if you grew up on burnt barbecue, that might be what you used to.
Mango ham barbecue, mango ham barbecue, mango ham barbecue, mango ham barbecue. Your barbecue on, get your barbecue.
Ever notice how the sound of sizzling meat and the smell of smoke can silence the noise of the world? Now that's barbecue therapy. If the fire moves you, like, subscribe, share, and help spread the message because growth, like good barbecue, takes time and patience. Welcome to your therapy session. Welcome to the BBQ Therapy Podcast. My name is Tavis Bryant, and today we're joined by a true legend, the historian, storyteller, and the judge who shaped the way we see barbecue today. He's an author of more than 10 books and a KCBS certified master judge, and the man behind the famous Diddy Wah Diddy sauce contest, the one and only Ardie Remus Powers Davis. Welcome to the show. I got one rule: make yourself at home and speak freely.
Thank you. And as if your audience is watching, this is totally unrehearsed. So I hope you'll edit out anything stupid that I say.
Well, it's okay. All right, we're going to start off from back at the beginning. From what I read, you were born in Oklahoma, correct?
That's right. Yeah, Oklahoma City.
All right. And back then, you were born in 41. So growing up, what was the barbecue scene around that time?
I was started on 7th Street, right near the Murrah building that was bombed, this famous Murrah building. Then my dad was a car painter. He started as a body man in a shop.
Mm-hmm.
We moved out to the outskirts of Oklahoma City at the time. We had a gravel road in front of the house, and there was a barbecue place a block away. And we could get what would probably be called a sloppy Joe now. It was baptized in pulled pork or pulled beef, depending on what was available.
Mm-hmm.
You get that sandwich in a bun and a bag of potato chips and an RC Cola for $0.25.
Oh, wow.
That's how long ago it was. So that was just a block away. And then, of course, my dad liked to barbecue. He had to work until noon on Saturdays, so he built his own barbecue pit. We bought it brick by brick and went to there was a place in Oklahoma City that made bricks. So my mother and I would go there, and whatever we could afford, we'd buy the bricks. And they also had the fire bricks, so when he was ready for those, we got those. He wore that out, just having neighborhood parties and with relatives and neighbors, and it was mostly grilling steaks and stuff. Because as I said, his only day off was Sunday, and he had Saturday afternoon and Sunday. That was it.
Okay.
So he taught me using that pit, and then when that wore out, he got a Weber kettle. And then he actually started some slow smoking barbecue. That's how I've learned. That's what I use today. Just a Weber kettle. And I've asked these guys with thousands of dollars worth of equipment at contests, what would you do if you didn't have much money? And they said, get a Weber kettle. And it works.
Yeah, it's definitely
the
true.
winner of Memphis in May, the first one, she just used a wash tub with a screen on top. And she won the whole thing, Memphis in May, downtown.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I read about that. That was cool.
Yeah.
So
Talk about legends. She's a legend.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Using what you had and making it work. That's why people try to downplay what people cook on, but it's about knowing how to cook and not what you're cooking.
It is. That's right. Yeah. At A&R in Memphis, there's a on Elvis Presley Boulevard, that's the only one I go to, his slogan up on the wall that says, "Anybody can put heat to the meat, but only a few can barbecue." I like
Exactly.
that.
It's definitely true. So you've lived through the full evolution of the barbecue culture. When did your love of barbecue first begin? When you got hooked, was it watching the parties or did it catch on later on?
It was from childhood on, but what got me involved in barbecue contests and such was when we moved to Kansas City. I moved there from New York City. We lived in New York City for 6 or 7 years.
Mhm.
It is in the '60s, the late '60s, and it was quite an experience. I loved it. I worked at a YMCA downtown, 34th and 9th Avenue.
Mhm.
I we had a babysitting pool, and some friends from the babysitting pool in New York came to visit us in Kansas City. They thought, man, Kansas City, they were true New Yorkers. They thought, yeah, cowboys and Indians and plains and all that. So they were impressed with how hilly it is and how much greenery there is and how much good barbecue there is. The first question the guy asked me was, "Have you been to Arthur Bryant's?" I had never heard of Arthur Bryant's. Turns out now his granddaughter lives near me, Renetta McKendra, and we're good neighbors and friends. So anyway, that's another long story. But we went to Arthur Bryant's with him, and I was hooked. That was when Mr. Bryant was alive, and he was always at the establishment when he was alive. In fact, he lived right upstairs there. One August in 1984, I got the idea I was reading Good Food by Jane and Michael Stern, and I thought, I'll never be able to travel like they do and write about places where they eat.
Mhm.
But they talked about 84 different barbecue places, I think 80 some. I decided I'll just write to those places and see if I can get their sauce and get an idea of what their barbecue may be like. It wouldn't be the meat, but it would be the sauce.
Mhm.
So I started doing that, and then it dawned on me, why don't I make a contest of it? I was listening to Ry Cooder's Paradise and Lunch album. He was singing Blind Blake's song, Diddy Wah Diddy. And I thought, man, that's a great name for a barbecue sauce contest. So I decided I'd call it the Diddy Wah Diddy Barbecue Sauce Contest. And I spelled it with D's instead of T's. And Ry Cooder sings that a lot like Blind Blake sings it. I have both versions recorded. Some friends who live in Missouri told us about a guy named Paul Kirk that they thought lived in Roland Park, where I live.
Mhm.
They said he would be a good judge. He's a barbecue guy. He gave me his phone number, and so I called him, and Paul Kirk showed up and with his wife Jessica, and that got me started. They judged, and we had more than 100 sauces. I went all over Kansas City getting sauces and got a bunch in the mail from different places. My brother-in-law happened to be in town. He's a CPA, so I enlisted him to be the comptroller, and he did that. It was a huge job, and it evolved from there. It got its own legs eventually after several years of hard work and good volunteers, including Paul Kirk. I barbecued the meat for that contest, and I didn't season anything because I wanted the sauce to do the talking.
Mhm.
And I don't know, I thought it was good barbecue. Paul volunteered after that to be the head pitmaster for the sauce. He would laugh at that, and we lost him, unfortunately, not long ago, last spring. But he and I became good friends, and he's taught me a lot about Kansas City barbecue and how to do it. And I was his gopher in some of his classes. So I like to channel what Paul taught me. He was always saying, now document it, write it down what you did. So if you did a good job, you'll be able to repeat it.
Mhm.
I'm really bad about that. I don't know. That got me started. Then tending fires at Memphis in May one year, staying up all night tending fires, taught me this is hard work. I really admire the cooks who do this to compete, and it takes a special person to do that. I decided these judges, they get to sleep all night and go to the contest, eat this good stuff, so I think I'll take that on. That's what I did, and then I got involved with Barbecue Society, and it's just, if, like Ben and Jerry said with their business motto, if it isn't fun, why do it? And it's been a lot of fun, still is. But I admire what you're doing and trying to attract more people into the passion and therapy of barbecue.
I'm trying to do that as well as speak to. There's a lot of people that people don't even know about, so I'm trying to get a lot of the history
Yeah,
also because it's lost and
that's right.
we don't know about it. But I'm gonna talk about that a little later. But when you started the sauce card, how long did it take you to gather all those sauces together?
Oh, I started in August and I had the contest in October, and sauces were still coming in. So
Oh wow,
it took a few months.
because
But
technology wasn't the same.
yeah, yeah. When I take on a project, I'm both feet involved.
And let's get into your persona, Remus Powers. What inspired the outfit, the name, and what did it allow you to express to the barbecue culture?
Okay. If you haven't detected, people don't believe me, but I'm extremely shy. And my dad was even worse at it. And I decided I was going to try to do something to cure that because it was a real burden for him. So anybody who can wear a Remus Powers outfit, a derby hat and an apron with rib bones on it, and Remus Powers, PhD, Doctor of Barbecue Philosophy. I'm a philosophy major, by the way. I do love philosophy. I penned that name in college. My wife, who's my wife now, we met in college, and I decided to write some poems to her, which I would now call doggerel, because I admire real poets too. I was terrible at it, but it worked. I did some love poems for her, and I went under the pen name Remus Powers. Remus, from the Uncle Remus stories that really fascinated me in childhood. I know the Disney version of Song of the South gets a lot of flack because of the Uncle Remus in that. But when you look at the real Uncle Remus, as portrayed by Joel Chandler Harris, I have a lot in common with him. I haven't, obviously, never met him. I've been to the Wren's Nest where he lived in Atlanta. I told Jim Ochmoody, who was on the board at the time, that I want to see where Harris wrote, and I want to see the room where he died. And I got to see both of those. Anyway, there's the Brer Rabbit stories are universal. I think most people can identify with the trickster and the rabbit, the Brer Rabbit, and it was a code for what to do, how to handle being oppressed. And one of the directors of the Wren's Nest, Harris's home, wrote an essay once, it's online, about everything you know about Uncle Remus is wrong. And the Disney stereotype is what caused that essay. One thing that really impressed me is Brer Rabbit does what I call Briar Patch Tai Chi. He figures out what the enemy, or what the people who want to do him in, what motivates them, and then he uses that to gain his freedom from them. In the case of the Briar Patch, he said, "Don't throw me in there. You can barbecue me, you can skin me, you can do whatever you want. Don't throw me in that Briar Patch," because he knew that's what they wanted. They wanted to hurt him as the most that they could. And throwing him in the Briar Patch he wanted them to think was the worst. So sure enough, that's what he got. And he laughed when they did it. He said, "This was my home. Thanks a lot." And another story that Uncle Remus himself, in the books that Harris listened carefully to the dialect of the former enslaved people that lived or came past the plantation where he was raised. He was illegitimate. I don't think anybody is illegitimate, regardless of their heritage.
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, my grandfather in the Ozarks of Missouri was called a woods colt because he didn't have a, quote, legitimate father. So I could relate to Harris in that respect too. And long story anyway. The story I want to tell is Uncle Remus would do teaching moments with the son of the plantation owner
Mm-hmm.
in the stories. And one of them, the son looked at Uncle Remus's palms of his hands and he said, "Hey, your palms look just like mine." And Uncle Remus chuckled and he said, "Sure, didn't you know that we all come from Africa and your ancestors used to be the same color as I am?" And the little boy thought that was funny, but it was really, when you study anthropology, you find out that was true. We all started in Africa, and it was a way that Uncle Remus was subversive to he was teaching the young the truth, and I like that.
That's a good name and a good concept that you came with because you actually just didn't
Yeah,
make it up. You had thought behind it.
yeah. And Powers happened to be a mechanic where my dad worked in a Lincoln Mercury shop that was near the Murrah building. In fact, one of the axles, or the axle from the truck that exploded, landed in the alley where my dad worked. My dad was retired at the time. But anyway, he was Powers and he had wire rim glasses and he was a cool guy like James Dean. And I thought, man, I want to be like Powers when I grow up. And my dad said, "I think you're going to go to college. I don't want you to have to make a living like this." And he hired me one summer after a hailstorm in Oklahoma City. After measuring a Lincoln Continental with a piece of sandpaper several times over, I decided my dad was right. I want to do something besides make a living that way. But that's my story. That's how I put the two together, Remus and Powers.
That's a good story.
I'm a philosopher.
So the American Royal, they contacted you about the sauce contest. Was the American Royal really big like it is now back
Yeah,
then?
it wasn't as big, but it was big. I set my date in October. At that time, the American Royal was in November.
Mhm.
So I set my date for the sauce contest so it wouldn't conflict with the meat contest. And sure enough, they got tired of the cold weather in November at that time, and they changed their date to my date. So I called the Royal and I explained the problem, and they said, "You need to talk to Jack Kay. He's chairing the barbecue contest." So I called Jack Kay and we met at an apple place and had ribs and talked for an hour or so. And after that, we decided, let's just marry the sauce contest with the meat contest. So we shook hands on it, and I recruited volunteers for several years. And the first year at the Royal, it was called the Diddy Wah Diddy.
Mhm.
And then I think they thought that sounded too serious. This is my joke. So they changed it to the American Royal, and now it's the American Royal World Series of Barbecue Sauce and Rub Contest. We added rubs later. We even had base at the Royal, but now it's sauces and rubs. So it had to get its own legs because it's a lot of work. We had PricewaterhouseCoopers for a while doing the comptrollers. Young CPAs would come with their laptops and do the comptrolling. And we had people spending basically almost all night pouring sauces into containers
Wow.
that were numbered instead of marked, so it was blind judging. And in fact, Joe McGuff, who was the sports editor at the Kansas City Star,
Mhm.
he was one of my judges when the contest was at Crown Center. Oh, by the way, my wife said this is too much trouble for our little house. You got to find a nerd to do this. So we did it at the Prairie Center one year, the second year. And after that, we did it for the Multiple Sclerosis Society, and that was at Crown Center. And Joe McGuff was a judge there. So he said, these cups you're using, that's not healthy. You need to have some squeeze bottles. So ever since then, we've used squeeze bottles, thanks to Joe McGuff. He later became editor of the Star, and now he's gone, of course. But that's one problem with being born in 1941. You see a lot of people come and go.
But you've seen the whole history of barbecue
Yeah,
and where it
I'm
was
grateful,
and where it is now.
grateful for that, and I'm grateful for you. You're doing a good job.
I'm trying to. Started with the creation of the KCBS. Were you there at the beginning when they thought about putting it
Yeah, I was a
together?
charter member. I wasn't one of the first 5 or 6 who joined, but Paul Kirk was. He was on the first board. And then I became a charter member, one of the first 25, and I became a board member later for several terms. And so I was there basically at the beginning. I knew Gary Wells, and Carolyn Wells is still a friend. We're writing a 40th anniversary cookbook for the Barbecue Society, and Paul Kirk was actually helping with that. And I told Carolyn and Paul, this is going to be our swan song. And of course, Paul, ornery the guy that he is, he started singing too early, so he's gone. But I can channel a lot of his. I have other recipes that he did for books that we didn't get published, and
Mm-hmm.
I can channel him when we're writing. Yep, yeah. Paul was in charge of the marketing committee when he was on the board,
Mm-hmm.
and he said we need. I think he was impressed with Memphis and May's judging certification. He said, we need to do that with KCBS, so why don't you propose something? So I wrote this big proposal about, at the time I thought judging 30 contests would be a big deal. You could be a master judge. They've since added other requirements, cooking with a team, and that I think that's a good requirement. So I did the proposal and the board accepted it, and it just sat there. Nothing happened after that. And so Ed Royth called me, said, he was on the board at the time. He said, let's put a curriculum together and let's get this thing rolling. I credit Ed with getting us started with writing. He came over to my house and we sat in the kitchen at the counter and worked out that curriculum. And of course, it's been revised since then, but we started the whole certification program just right near the patio where the Diddy Wah Diddy was born.
All right. So you're a certified master judge, a title that very few hold. Can you break down what that means as far as?
Now, when you write the rules, right now you have to judge at least 30 contests. There's a book where the representative, they call them contest rep, or the sponsor, or anyone involved officially with the contest, they can sign your book saying that you judged that contest. You have to do at least 30 contests. You have to shadow a cook team. And right now, as far as I know, that's it. There's a test that you take and a course that you take.
Mm-hmm.
It's for several hours, but that's where they review the rules and you actually eat some real barbecue, each of the 4 meat categories. And there's a few trick questions and a few trick presentations to see if you're paying attention. And then you explain why you rated something the way you did, that kind of stuff. It's an interactive, hands-on course. And after you pass that, you're a certified barbecue judge. So I don't say it's the only way. I've judged in Houston. I really like how they have more longer point scan than the KCBS. We just go from 0 to 9. They go up, 15 or 20 on some categories. And they judge aroma.
Oh, wow.
Because you can't taste if you can't smell. And so you smell it first and you judge the aroma. Make sure you smell a little bit of hickory smoke, or in Texas, mesquite or whatever, post oak, whatever they're using. But you should smell some smoke, and then you judge that, you rate it and on aroma. So that's one thing I love about the Houston style. And I don't know if the other contests in Texas use that, or if it's exclusive to the world champion contest in Houston. But I'm also certified with Memphis in May and the Memphis Barbecue Association. They all. I'm not dogmatic about it. I know at Memphis they say, hold your hand up if you're KCBS certified, and then if you do, then they say, forget everything they told you. We don't do that in Kansas City. We're more inclusive and accepting of, if you love barbecue, you're our people.
When you're sitting at a judging table, what separates an average entry from an unforgettable one?
That's in the oath I wrote. I say you will judge subjectively and objectively. Objective is limited to, is it the right kind of meat? Is it presented correctly according to KCBS rules? That kind of thing. The objective rules. In answering your question, it's really a subjective thing, and does it have that wow? I want a kiss of smoke. I have friends who want really boatload of smoke, I'd call it, and to me that makes you can smoke it too much to the point that it's bitter. I don't like bitter barbecue. I like a kiss of smoke. I like to know that it was barbecued. There's three styles of barbecue. There's kissed, or there's naked first. It's unseasoned, and that's the real test of a barbecue. If the cook, anyway, if they can cook it unseasoned and it's good, then that's got the wow factor. It can be kissed with barbecue sauce, or it can be baptized in barbecue sauce. And to me, it's a meat contest, so I like to taste the meat. I don't want the sauce to overpower the meat.
Mm-hmm.
So an ideal entry for me, and judges vary by this, would be I can taste that it's barbecued, it's tender, it's easy to chew, and it's got that wow factor. It makes my mouth sing. And we eat some saltines and take a sip of water between judging, and it's a hands-on thing too. I pick up the rib and eat it and taste it and pull the meat if it's brisket. It's basically what it's all about. If it's that good, it gets a 9. I'm pretty lenient with presentation. If it fits the objective standards, I'll give it an 8 or a 9. It's the taste and the tenderness that are important, the most important.
Oh yeah, definitely. Do you know around how many competitions you've judged to date?
I stopped counting. It's been going on 40 years. I judged Jack Daniels I wasn't at the first one, but I judged for 33 years there.
Wow.
And I'm promised to go back to the 40th anniversary. It'll be in 3 years. And I want to give the oath. I always gave the oath. Now my grandson, Zachary, is giving the oath.
Oh, wow.
I told him you have to memorize it, because at contests, if somebody's not there who's memorized it, they read the oath. And I said, well, you've got to memorize it and say it from memory. And it's not that difficult. So he did a good job last year, and he's all excited about going this year. And this year I'm not there. I'm writing a thing about Plato, the philosopher,
Mm-hmm.
who could time travel, and I think it's 4,200 years or so. And his spirit is there at the Jack this weekend, along with the spirits of all those people who have been there or who wish they had been there.
Mm-hmm.
And now I call us pre-spirits, and they're spirits now. It's my friend who worked with Hallmark.
Mm-hmm.
He says, well, you're into science fiction. It's fun. So the actual spirits probably outnumber the number of judges there. I can just think of all kinds of people that I've met through the years who are gone now. Unfortunately, Paul Kirk's going to be there in spirit. His wife and his daughter Erin will be there. He taught her a lot about barbecue.
Yeah, he was a legend. Let's talk about this. This is one of the main points I wanted to bring up that I said before. They got, like, in sports, if I wanted to see stats, I can go look at anybody's stats going all the way back. But when it comes to barbecue, it only goes back a certain year and then it just non-existent and you have to go by word of mouth. What are your thoughts on that, where we're unable to see where some of the other legends, we're not able to see where some of the other legends, what they
Mhm.
did, and can't compare them to what we see today?
Yeah. Yeah, and today it's becoming very different as even barbecue restaurants who they used to be brick pits and it evolved to that. Now they're using stainless steel ovens and high-tech stuff.
Hmm.
And it works. Given the volume and the popularity of barbecue, you have to do that. But I was glad to see Rodney Scott still does his whole hog all night long. And he's there tending it. And that's the old style that I admire. Old style to us.
Hmm.
I have postcards of, and I'm sure you've seen pictures of when there would be a community barbecue, they would just dig a trench or several trenches in the ground, put grate over the trench, and put coals. First, they'd put coals in the trench, and then barbecue that way. And they're just all styles. I guess there's a little bit of archival material, but a lot of it's just we have to imagine what did they do. Yeah. I like to say that barbecuers were the original philosophers
Hmm.
because they used to sit around the campfire doing live fire barbecue with the meat of the day from their hunt, talking about the meaning of life and other philosophical questions. And that's where we got the expression, I have a bone to pick with you. That's my story. Somebody asked me, is that true? And I said, no, but it sounds good.
Because there are so many people that we don't know about, like Donnie Teal back in the day, and when Paul
Right,
Kirk and them used to compete, but we have no stats to look up and see scores and what competitions they won and stuff like that.
right.
Were there anybody back then that because you've been through a lot, that compares to people like Darren Worth and Brad Leidinger and Travis Clark that were back then that we may not know about?
I think you know about most of them. The one that is the most conscientious about repeating what he does and is familiar with the science of barbecue, I'd say Tuffy Stone is one of those. Chris Lilly is another. He's he experiences. They both experience contest style and restaurant style because I really admire people like who do both. Tootsie Tomanetz is another of my, I guess you'd say, heroine. She doesn't even use a thermometer. She just puts her hand on the pit. She can tell whether it's the right temperature. And I love her barbecue and her beans. She just makes from scratch.
Oh, wow.
I told her the one time I was there in person, I get to see her every year uh, at the American Royal.
Hmm.
And I told her how much I love those beans, and she got an old pickle jar and filled it with her beans and said, "Here, take these."
Oh, wow.
So I took them, and Paul wanted me to share them, and unfortunately, they were gone by the time he was ready for them. So anyway, that's when we were traveling all over Texas at the time.
And when it comes to competition barbecue, what do you think what was your greatest moment in competition barbecue?
Oh gosh, it's hard to say. It's a lot of it is memorable. Every contest is memorable in its own way. I really liked how Memphis in May would originally, when it was in Tom Lee Park
Hmm.
and it was volunteers, Mike Cannon set the basically the infrastructure of the contest. Mike died I think a year or two ago.
Hmm.
They had a reception for the judges at the Orpheum Theater, I think, downtown, and they had local food restaurants cater the event, and they welcomed all the judges, gave them a little bit of orientation. Judging at that was memorable. Jack Daniels is another. They treat people well there. You get a bag full of swag and the local product, as they say. There's always a bottle of the local product in the swag bag. And you get the Jack Daniels experience there. I'd say the Jack Daniels, the Memphis in May, the American Royal, those three stand out in my mind. And it's hard to say what year was
Hmm.
the best because they're all good in their own way. I do miss at the American Royal. I miss the West Bottoms environment where the American Royal is now, and then eventually they're moving to out near the racetrack, the Legends area.
Hmm.
But on the West Bottoms, I could actually go to each team and socialize for a little bit. It's so big now with up to 500 teams.
Hmm.
I can't do that. And my legs are, it's a lot of walking. And I have to admit, when you're 80, going on 84, you slow down a little bit. So fortunately, they have golf carts. So I'll ask them, I'll see who's there. And I say, I've got to see barbecue shoguns from Japan. They take me there and see them and see other Chris Lilly and Tuffy Stone.
Hmm.
Make a point of seeing them. Don McLemore is Chris's father-in-law. Sometimes he's with him. So they're all good. And then the smaller contests. This last Saturday I was at Gladstone. They had a smoke fest, and as meat's becoming so expensive, they just limited the meat to one category, ribs. And they said that they had steak too, ribeye, and that's expensive. So I think next year they might switch to chicken because that's cheapest. And to me, the true test of a barbecuer is you can take the cheapest, toughest meat and give it that wow quality. That's always the test for me. If you can't barbecue with the cheapest, toughest meat and make it delicious, you haven't mastered it yet. But
Yeah.
and unfortunately, in the contests, they're trying to up their game, so they'll buy prime quality and Wagyu or some fancy marbled meat. Maybe that works for them, but to me, that's not the true test of a barbecuer. But
Definitely, I agree with that 100%. And it took the fun out of the competition wise, because if somebody
yeah,
can't afford the meat, it's not
right.
fair. But if everybody's on level playground and getting regular meat, then we can see who's the best cook.
That's exactly. And KCBS we had spring training before there were very many contests, and you'd pay at the same price and you'd get the same kind of meat. Every team would get the same type of meat. That's how it should
I
be.
agree. Okay, let's switch over to your books. You've authored more than 10 books on barbecue. What first drew you to capturing barbecue and writing?
I like to write for one thing. That's where, like Joel Chandler Harris said, the other guy takes over when I write. And when you write, you can do that. You're anonymous, so to speak.
Hmm.
But actually, what got me into book writing was I was asked to do it. Karen Adler, who is the local food or barbecue book broker, I would say. She had what she called the Pig Out Publications, and she said, "Why don't you do a primer on Kansas City barbecue?" So I said, "Okay, I'll do it." So I wrote, that was my first book, the Kansas City barbecue primer or something like that. And I did it under the title Remus Powers, PhD. And then this guy named Dennis Hayes out in Oakland, California, with 10 Speed Press called. He said, "We're doing a great barbecue sauce book. How about you write it?" I said, "Okay." And so I did that, and that I just got all kinds of sauces that way. And what I learned,
Mm-hmm.
there were times when I thought, why did I say yes to this? Because there's so many tomato-based sauces, and to write something unique about each one was a real challenge. So I read Anne Lamott. She has a really good book. She's a very irreverent writer, but I admire her style. She wrote a book called Bird by Bird, and the title is based on her brother, who put off writing an essay on birds until the day before it was due. And he went to his dad and he said, "Dad, I've got this term paper project I've got to do on birds, and I haven't even started." And the dad said, "Son, you just do it bird by bird." And I decided I'm going to do this book sauce by sauce, and I got it done. And then after every book I've done, somebody has said, called me and said, "Would you do this book?" So
Wow.
I don't, if it's about barbecue, I can't say no. But I did learn in writing about America's best barbecue.
Mm-hmm.
A friend who was a doctor, a researcher at the University of Kansas, he told me a story. He was a World War II pilot, and he said we had a reunion of the pilots in France, and it was at a winery. And I'm not into wine, he said, but people were sampling the wines of this winery. And he was standing off to the side, and this guy walked up to him. They got acquainted a little bit, and Stan, my friend, said, "I can tell you know something about wine. Tell me, how do I know what's the best wine?" And the guy said, "Well, the best wine is the wine you like." And turned out that guy owns the winery. Anyway, I thought that story applies to barbecue too. So I tell people the best barbecue is the barbecue you like.
Exactly.
You can start a real argument in Memphis or in Kansas City who does the best barbecue. So we were pretty arrogant to say America's best, but it's a catchy title. So I will tell people best barbecue is the barbecue you like.
Exactly. That's definitely true, because if you grew up on burnt barbecue, that might be what you're used to.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Yeah. So you did a lot of collabs with Paul Kirk and some books. What made your friendship and collaboration so special?
He reminded me of my grandpa in a lot of ways. He's real gruff on the outside and just tenderhearted on the inside. You wouldn't know it. In fact, he was astonished one time when I told him, "Paul, people are intimidated by you." And he said, "He really?" He said, "Why?" And I said, "I guess you know so much. You've got this reputation." And he just couldn't comprehend how anybody would be intimidated by him. Because if you got to know him, he was just a very tenderhearted guy, and he had his own style of philanthropy. He would feed the homeless on Saturdays here in Kansas City. He was a chef, certified working chef, and he would cook up some barbecue or big pots of soup and go down. There's a park right next to Crown Center, and a lot of homeless people live there, and there'd just be word got around. Lots of people would come and eat his food. So that, and we traveled a lot together writing books, and it was a good partnership. I regret that like I said, he started singing too soon. I'd call him up. I'd say, "Paul, you're too ornery to die," and he'd just chuckle. He had to pass away. That's the life cycle. We know it's going to happen to all of us.
But he left behind a good legacy, so he
He did.
definitely will be remembered.
Yeah.
And how long have you been writing for the BBQ News magazine? How did that get started?
Oh, that Carolyn Wells started it as a newsletter. I think she mimeographed it back in the day when they had the mimeograph machines. And I can still smell that ink that they used. Then they hired Bunny Tuttle to be an editor for the newspaper. So I've been writing, gosh, almost 40 years for the bullsheet.
Mm-hmm.
And people say, what do they pay? They pay nothing. It's just, and the same with the BBQ News. I met Doc Gillis and Joe Phelps at Memphis in May one year. They were starting the BBQ News, and they said, "Say, we sure appreciate you. Would you write some articles for us?" And I said, "Sure, I'll do it." Been doing it ever since.
Oh, wow.
And our society, our culture is so monetized.
Mhm.
People ask me, especially younger people, "What do you get paid for that?" And I say, "Nothing." And with books, it's a labor of love. Unless you're a big name, you just don't make much on royalties. But you do it because you want to share. And again, if it isn't fun, why do it? If you like to write and you like to share, then you're in the right place. Doesn't matter whether you make a lot of money from it or not.
And I subscribe. I've been subscribing for a while now, and I live in Georgia.
That's a great state. I love Georgia.
I do too.
I do have to say they're a little bit on the hogmatism scale. Not, at least I think in Georgia you can barbecue more than hogs, but in the Carolinas, if it's not hog, it's not barbecue. So I call them hogmatists.
Yeah, we love hog. You wrote an article in the BBQ News magazine. It was the art and science of barbecue. Can you break that down as far as what do you see as art and what do you see as
Yeah.
science when it comes to barbecue?
Glad you asked, because I'm still searching for the answers. But the art is the intangible part, and that's when you see artful barbecue and you taste it and you've found it. The science, I have real issues with calling anything the science of barbecue when there are so many variables like the weather, the background of the cook, the local culture, the type of meat, the quality of meat that you can get. There's so many variables that it's really hard to make it a science. Now, Meathead, really admire what he's done with calling it the science of barbecue, hiring a guy with a physics degree and doing tests and everything. But again, you could follow any recipe in his books or any book, any cookbook, and get the same. You won't get the same result that the person who did the recipe got. There's a guy in Florida who, gosh, what's his name? At my age, there's so much up here that I'll think of the name anyway. He said, it's intangible. Said, I put love in my barbecue, and nobody can do it the way I do it because they can't love it the way I do. And so I'd say if it's a science, it's a very inexact science. Paul was always telling me, as I mentioned, write it down, document it. That's one step toward making it a science. Tuffy Stone would probably agree. Write it down, keep a journal. And I think that's good advice, but don't count on it being the same. Even following exactly the way you did it. You'd be disappointed. And then some cooks will tell me, man, I turned in the worst chicken I've ever cooked. Turns out it gets a blue ribbon, first place. And the same with beans or brisket or ribs, they'll say, "Man, I turned in the worst I've ever cooked." Turns out it won. Grand champion, you can say. They could say, "This was my worst year of cooking." They ended up being grand champion. So you never know.
Yeah, it's definitely true.
That's why I tell people, just don't try to second guess the judges. Just do it the way that fits your standards, and they like it or they don't. And if you're lucky, you win.
That's true.
At the Jack Daniels, we started doing a magic hickory nut ritual.
Hmm.
Where each team that is competing gets a magic hickory nut. And I started with, they were just blank nuts that I would marinate in Jack Daniels and Kansas City water and dry them out. And I would and I'd put some barbecue seasonings, some sauce and some rub, just give it a little smell. I would tell the teams, I put all the magic I can into this. Now it's up to you to add to the magic. And if you got the magic nut, we'll see you on the awards stage. And Denny Mike, who in Maine, helped us do the nuts one year. He said, "Why don't you put the logo on these nuts?" So ever since then, that was years ago, each nut has the contest logo on it.
Wow.
And since I don't say retired, I've rewired. I don't travel much anymore. Locally, I do, but in terms of flying and all that stuff, I'll do that again for the Jack, assuming I'm here for another 3 or 4 years. Now where was I going with that? Anyway, the magic nuts. We've done since I retired from that, I found a fellow barbecuer who would continue the tradition of the burning of regrets on Friday night.
Mhm.
I'll tell you that story. And the magic hickory nuts, that's only at the Jack Daniels you could get these nuts. And I tell people these are good luck nuts forever. For as long as you have that nut, you take good care of it and it'll take good care of you. And magic is a intangible anyway. So that tradition continues. It has Brian Nowotny as the person that took it on.
Mhm.
James Reynolds, who used to be a security guard at the Jack Daniels distillery, he and his wife Wanda harvest the nuts. And at a secret location, I can't tell you where it is, but I can tell you it's in Tennessee. And they're really, he called me this morning. He said, we harvested 200 nuts for next year. And he finds really good ones. And you had to be there. I could go on and on about hickory nuts, but it takes 20 years before a hickory nut tree, these are shagbark hickory nuts,
Mhm.
before it even starts to produce nuts.
Wow.
So they are very special nuts, and they're hard to crack, but they're in the pecan family. Anyway, we do that, and then the burning of regrets.
Mhm.
Paul used to help with that. I got the idea from the burning of the Old Man of Gloom in New Mexico, I believe. And I proposed that to Tana Shoup, who was head of the Jack Daniels barbecue at the time. Then she changed her back to her maiden name, Tana Frensley. I said, let's do this burning of regrets in a pig. And I made a paper mache pig to burn. And she said, man, that is the ugliest pig I've ever seen. She talked to Tony Stone, who had a welding shop, a metalwork shop.
Mhm.
He designed a metal pig, and we said, what can we call it? Jasper. Jasper happens to be the real Jack Daniels' first name, Jasper Newton Daniel.
Oh wow.
I don't know where he got the name Jack, but people call him Jack. And so this pig is named Jasper. And I've always thought maybe he regretted that name. So
Mhm.
that's a perfect name for this pig. So anyway, Paul's name is going into the pig this year, along with others that we miss. And anybody can telepath their regrets this Friday night We burn that pig, and you can telepath your regrets into that pig's belly. It's a metal pig. We'll toss it on the fire, count of 0 from 10 to 0.
Mm-hmm.
And I invite anyone. A lot of people, if you ask them in person, write down your regret. It's confidential. We'll put it in the pig and burn it. They'll say, I don't have any regrets. I don't know anybody who's lived a life without some regrets.
Exactly.
you give it some thought, you'll come up with some.
And what is seen online, Grease House University?
I had the honor of meeting Mr. Bryant in person
Mm-hmm.
when he was alive. And he was a very humble guy. And I read somewhere that he took fame as a grain of salt. Calvin Trillin wrote about his restaurant was the world's best restaurant and all that. And he said, it's just a grease house. So that's where the name comes from, Grease House University. And I thought that was a great name.
Yeah, it is.
A good example. I bought a bottle of sauce from him his last day on earth. He made change out of his pocket.
Mm-hmm.
He gave me a pen to promote his barbecue restaurant that had a Hereford steer in a liquid in the handle of the pen. So I gave that to my brother-in-law, who was passing through town, and he said that was the greatest honor that he had, given all the awards he had won from computers, and he was in the computer business, and
Mm-hmm.
he still has that pen. Fortunately, somebody gave me one that she had been given, so I have one here.
Okay, it was cool.
These barbecue guys, they can talk forever.
Oh, I'm fine.
For an hour.
This is history. We don't get to hear too often. Barbecue has always been about more than just food. How do you see it continuing to shape the community and the culture in the years ahead?
From what I read, it's culturally, it's a big deal now. Like $4 billion, more than $4 billion will be spent on barbecue cookers just this year.
Oh, wow.
74% of Americans will grill at least once. Now, I include grilling as part of barbecue. If you're cooking with fire,
Mm-hmm.
you're barbecuing. And that's mostly burgers, hot dogs, sausage, chicken, that kind of thing. 74% of Americans will do that. So we're talking millions of people who cook some barbecue in their own. To me, the grilling is a gateway drug to the low and slow method of bigger cuts of meat, brisket, and even ribs. To do them, it's going to take some time. Mm-hmm. In Memphis, they do the baby backs, grill them fast, and they're good. So the trick is, in terms of competition barbecue, how do we attract them to that? Mm-hmm. And that happens to be the subject of my next bullshit article. And I'm calling it a bold idea. I've been reading about artificial intelligence, quote unquote, algorithms and all that. And we have to be in step with the current culture and start attracting younger people into the passion and the therapy of barbecue.
True.
And we've got TikTok is a big deal. I'm a dinosaur when it comes to social media. And so when my grandkids keep me up to date, our granddaughter was doing 6'7". I said, what's that? And they said, I had to look it up. It's meaningless. It's a TikTok star who she sings a song in 6/7 cadence, so whatever that means. Right. I'm not a musician, but love you. And all the kids. One of my grandsons is a student teacher now in elementary education. He's in his senior year at college, KU, and he said his kindergartners are even saying 6/7, and they all chuckle if you do that. It's a whole different culture. We have to figure out how to attract the younger ones into the passion and the therapy of barbecue. And we'll see a lot of changes, I think, in the future because, as I say, meat prices are going up. The Good Food Institute they're passionate about having lab produced meat or plant-based meat. Who knows? We can only guess what the future is going to be like.
Exactly.
Robotic kitchens now, and I don't think you can robot judges. You can teach a robot the rules, but there's that wow factor that you can't. A robot can't know that. That's where we humans, we have judgment and we have the intelligence. Artificial intelligence is great at scanning everything that's available online, answering our questions. It's great. If you have a question, just ask Siri. You don't have to have it memorized. But we have to be in step with today's culture. And I think once people taste it, once somebody competes and gets a ribbon, they're hooked.
Exactly. That's why they need to push Kids Q and all that other stuff to hook them in there. Because when they're a kid, when you win something, it's going to hook you when you're a kid.
That's right. That's right. That's exactly right. And glad you mentioned that because I really applaud those who get kids involved and teach them, and barbecue will do the rest.
So I'm an advocate for just the barbecue community and getting the word out and just having more things for the community, even the community to come out to competitions, just have stuff for the community to bring them out and not just have a contest where there's just cooks out there, where they'll have other stuff for the kids and families to come out.
That's important. And I hope more and more contests get that attitude. Make it fun, make it something that attracts people. And
everybody loves barbecue, so it brings community.
You taste it, you're cooked.
All right, that's all the questions I have. I got a quick game I'm gonna play with you, and then I get you out of here. In college basketball, they have a tournament bracket, so I made a tournament bracket with 16 meats that you cook on the grill, and I'm gonna give you each matchup, and just tell me which one that you prefer to eat. All right, we'll see who the winner. First matchup is lamb versus brisket.
Brisket. I love lamb ribs in particular, and the older sheep, the Otis Boyd here in Kansas City used to do what he called lamb breast. So good. He baptized it with his sauce, but you could still taste the meat. But in terms of lamb or brisket, if I had to choose, I'd choose brisket.
All right. Next matchup is smoked ham versus sausage.
Sausage, because commercial ham has been slow smoked. Now, if you take the raw smoked, uncold smoked ham and barbecue it, that'd be I would choose that because it's like the pork shoulder. And I've done the ham that way, and it's delicious.
Okay. Next matchup is smoked turkey versus beef ribs.
Beef ribs are wonderful. I love beef ribs. I also love smoked turkey, but if I had to choose, I'd choose the beef ribs.
All right. Next matchup is barbecue shrimp versus hamburger.
I'm biased about it. I love shrimp, but I would have to say hamburgers, they're my therapy. On Saturday, it's a long story, but I had to have a hamburger every Saturday.
Oh, wow. All right. Next matchup is pork chop versus smoked chicken.
Smoked chicken. And the pork chop is anything? Is it grilled or?
Yeah, it's grilled. Anything on the grill.
I'd have to say smoked chicken because I'm going to get more barbecue flavor.
All right. Smoked bologna versus pork ribs.
You're talking to an Okie. Golly. Obviously ribs, but I'm glad you said bologna because in Oklahoma we'd say, well, you know what you're talking about. Because if you said bologna or something like that, you couldn't be trusted. But we do a lot of barbecue bologna there. You'll find it in restaurants and even in Texas, the bologna.
All right. Next one is hot dog versus pork belly.
Well, pork belly, for sure.
All right. Next matchup is steak versus burnt ends.
Well, if it's real burnt ends, I would choose the burnt ends. What I'm seeing in a lot of restaurants, due to demand, I can't knock the proprietors, are beef cubes that they're calling burnt ends. But Calvin Trillin called them burnt edges, and they used to be free at Arthur Bryant's. You just reach in
Oh,
where they were
wow.
trimming the brisket, and you could grab a handful free.
Oh, wow.
That was heaven. And I'd still order beef and fries there after getting some free burnt edges.
All right. Next round, brisket versus sausage.
Well, brisket, because it's more predictable what that's going to taste like. The sausage, it's going to depend on who made it and who cooked it.
Okay. Beef ribs versus hamburger.
I'd say ham depends on the day of the week, but beef ribs over hamburgers.
All right. And chicken versus pork ribs.
Pork ribs.
Okay. Pork belly
I
versus
like them
burnt
both.
ends.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh
Pork
gosh.
belly versus burnt
Now
ends.
you're getting really.
Yeah.
I'd say pork belly, and again, it depends on who cooked it.
All right.
Because I've
Final
had
four, brisket.
so-called pork
Go ahead.
belly burnt ends. I didn't like them. Pork belly versus what? Chicken?
Yeah. Final four is brisket versus beef ribs.
Brisket, because yeah, that's a tough choice. But if I had to choose between them, I'd do the brisket.
Okay.
But,
And pork rib versus pork belly.
golly, pork belly, barbecued pork belly is just so delicious. Yeah, and so are ribs. But those are difficult choices.
Exactly. All right. Final matchup.
My mood.
Brisket versus pork belly.
Brisket versus pork belly. I'd go with brisket again. That's a tough choice.
All right. Brisket is the winner. All right, Mr. Davis, your therapy session is over. If you have anything to promote or any shout outs, you can do that at this time.
Okay. Stay tuned for the 40th anniversary Barbecue Society cookbook, Kansas City Barbecue Society. It's probably going to be out in 2027 the way things are going. I can blame it on Paul now that he's gone. We had a meeting with the publisher yesterday and reorganized the book and everything. So I think we'll have it done in this January, but publication, publishing is a jungle. It's likely to be 2027 before it sees print. By then, maybe my estate can, or whatever we've made, has gone to my grandkids' college. So my share of it is divided 3 ways, and it's a labor of love.
Definitely.
I hope people will enjoy it. I think they will.
Oh, we will. Definitely.
There's recipes and there's a lot of sidebars, some trivia, some stories. It's entertaining.
Yeah. I definitely appreciate you coming on the show and sharing your time and your stories and stuff like that.
Thank you.
No problem. And we'll see everybody next episode. We just wrapped up another session of barbecue therapy. Remember, stay patient, stay passionate, and keep that fire burning. Hit subscribe, share the good smoke, and pay the secretary on your way out. Have a blessed day.